Emotional day for many Catholics in our area. They're attending what will likely be the last regular Mass.
Pastor Michael locked the church doors for the last time on Easter Sunday, 2021, the same sanctuary where his great-grandfather was baptized, where 650 people once worshipped. That morning, 38 people showed up, average age 72. No children, no teenagers. The building sold 3 months later for $2.1 million. It's luxury apartments now. The cross is gone. And this story is repeating across New England every single month. Pastor Michael's church isn't unique. It's the pattern. Massachusetts church attendance, 10 to 12%. Vermont, below 10%. The lowest in America. New Hampshire, Maine, Connecticut, Rhode Island, all the same. Church attendance between 10 and 15%, far below the national average. But those numbers hide something worse. Among people under 30 in New England, over 40% claim no religious affiliation at all. They're called nones. No faith, no church, no interest. Among people under 40, church attendance drops to single digits in most counties. The younger you are in New England, the less likely you've ever stepped inside a church. The closures tell the institutional story. The Archdiocese of Boston closed over 70 parishes between 2004 and 2024. 70 churches. Gone. The Episcopal Diocese of Massachusetts closed or merged over 30 churches in 15 years. Congregational churches, the denomination the Puritans founded, have closed by the hundreds. In Vermont alone, churches shut their doors permanently since 2010. These aren't struggling churches limping along with 20 members. These are permanent closures. Buildings sold, congregations dissolved, centuries of history erased. Here's the generational collapse in raw numbers. In 1990, 65% of New Englanders identified as Christian. By 2020, only 54%, an 11-point drop in 30 years. But identification doesn't mean belief. It doesn't mean attendance. Of those who call themselves Christian, fewer than 20% attend church monthly. Do the math. Actual practicing Christians in New England might be as low as 10% of the total population. A post-Christian society, not declining, already gone. Walk through downtown Concord, New Hampshire. You'll see the old church buildings, beautiful architecture, steeples pointing to heaven. But look closer. The signs read luxury lofts, craft cocktail bar, fitness center. The building survived. The faith didn't. So how did this happen? How did the most Christian region in American history become the least Christian in one generation? The answer involves 5 devastating factors that worked together to kill Christianity where it was born. To understand what when you need to know what New England was. The Puritans who landed in Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1630 came with a mission: build a Christian society, a city upon a hill that would shine to the world. Governor John Winthrop preached that sermon aboard the ship Arbella before they even reached land. For the first 150 years, church attendance was mandatory. By law, towns were required to support a congregational church and minister. Christianity wasn't just personal faith. It was the foundation of society itself. The Great Awakenings started here. The 1740s revival. Jonathan Edwards preaching in Northampton. George Whitefield drawing thousands across the region. These movements shaped American Christianity and sent missionaries worldwide. New England churches planted churches across America as settlers pushed west. Harvard, Yale, Brown, Dartmouth, all founded to train ministers and promote Christian education. For 300 years, New England was America's Christian headquarters, the intellectual center, the cultural heart, the spiritual engine. By the 1950s, churches were packed. First Congregational Church of Concord had 650 people every Sunday. Catholic churches in Boston held multiple masses to handle the crowds. Protestant denominations built new buildings to accommodate growth. New England looked invincible, Christian forever. But something was already changing. something that had started decades earlier in the seminaries and universities. A theological shift that would eventually hollow out the entire region. By 2020, the collapse was complete. So what destroyed it? What forces were powerful enough to kill Christianity where it was strongest? The first factor started in the classrooms of New England's most prestigious institutions. By the early 1900s, New England's elite seminaries embraced something called theological liberalism. Harvard Divinity School, Yale, Andover Seminary. The institutions founded to train preachers started questioning the Bible itself. Virgin birth? Probably myth. Resurrection? Metaphorical? Miracles? Scientifically impossible. Liberal theology promised to save Christianity by making it intellectually respectable. Modern, acceptable to educated people, it reinterpreted Christianity as ethical teaching rather than divine revelation. New England's educated class loved it. Progressive ministers filled pulpits. Churches adopted the new theology, thinking it would preserve Christianity in a secular age. It did the opposite. Here's what researchers discovered decades later. Liberal theology didn't preserve Christianity. It killed it. Churches that abandoned core doctrines lost the distinctive message that made Christianity compelling in the first place. Why sacrifice your Sunday morning for ethical teaching you could get from a philosophy professor? Why join a church that doesn't claim unique truth? The United Church of Christ, descended directly from New England Congregationalism, has lost over 50% of its members since 1960. The Episcopal Church experienced similar catastrophic decline. They accommodated culture. They dropped unpopular doctrines. They became progressive. And they collapsed faster than anyone else. But here's the twist nobody expected. New England didn't just lose church attendance. It rewired its entire culture. Public schools that once included Bible reading eliminated all religious content. Universities founded as Christian institutions became centers of secular thought. By the 1980s and 90s, New England had created an educational system where religious belief was presented as outdated, even oppressive. The intellectual elite, concentrated in Boston, Cambridge, and university towns, became overwhelmingly secular. Media, publishing, academia, professional culture, all tilted heavily, secular and often hostile to traditional faith. Being openly Christian, especially with orthodox beliefs, carried social costs, career costs. Young people absorbed secular values from schools, media, and peers that contradicted anything they might learn in church. New England didn't just drift from faith. It actively taught each generation that faith was unnecessary. Each generation became more secular than the last. Baby boomers less religious than their parents. Gen X less religious than boomers. Millennials less than Gen X. Gen Z even less. Compound decline, accelerating with each decade. But the third factor delivered a blow that destroyed credibility overnight. January 2002. The Boston Globe published the Spotlight investigation. Decades of sexual abuse by priests in the Boston Archdiocese. But the real shock wasn't the abuse itself. It was the cover-up. Cardinal Bernard Law and church leadership had knowingly reassigned abusive priests to new parishes rather than reporting them to police. They protected predators. They enabled abuse for decades. Catholic credibility in New England died overnight. The Archdiocese of Boston had over 2 million members. Hundreds of thousands walked away. Many never returned to any church. The scandal confirmed what secular culture had been saying. Religious institutions are hypocritical and harmful. Young people especially cited the scandal as reason to reject all Christianity, not just Catholicism, all of it. The financial devastation was massive. Legal settlements forced the Archdiocese to close over 70 parishes and sell properties to pay victims. Institutional collapse directly caused by moral failure. Trust, once broken, never fully returned. And while churches reeled from scandal, economic forces accelerated the decline. New England became one of the most expensive regions in America. Young families couldn't afford to stay. Between 2010 and 2020, several New England states lost population. The people who left were disproportionately younger families, the exact demographic churches need to survive. Those who remained were often highly educated professionals. Technology, medicine, finance, academia. These sectors have lower religious participation rates than almost any other field. But here's what made this economically devastating. New England has the highest property costs in America outside California. Churches built in the 1700s and 1800s require massive maintenance, historical preservation, heating century-old buildings, property taxes on valuable urban land. Small congregations of 50 to 100 elderly members on fixed incomes couldn't generate the $200,000 to $400,000 needed annually to maintain these buildings. Churches that survived 200 years closed not because of theology. They closed because they couldn't pay the heating bill, an institutional tragedy driven by economics. But the final factor made biblical Christianity culturally toxic. New England became America's most politically liberal region. Traditional Christian teaching on marriage, gender, and sexuality became deeply countercultural, even offensive to majority opinion. Christian schools faced pressure to change policies or lose accreditation. Christian students on campuses felt marginalized for their beliefs. Professionals holding traditional views faced potential career consequences. Young Christians faced a choice: maintain biblical beliefs and accept social marginalization, or conform to cultural norms and abandon distinctive Christian teaching. Many chose to leave Christianity entirely. But here's the cruel irony. Churches that maintained conservative theology lost young people who found the cultural cost too high. Churches that abandoned conservative theology to accommodate culture also lost members because they offered nothing distinctive from secular progressive values. Both approaches failed. New England became culturally inhospitable to virtually all forms of traditional Christianity. Maximum cultural resistance, minimum cultural support, conditions devastating for passing faith to the next generation. 5 factors, working together, compounding over decades. The result? Complete collapse. But here's what should terrify every Christian outside New England. These same 5 factors exist everywhere else. They're just 20 to 30 years behind. The Pacific Northwest already looks like New England. Oregon and Washington show the same church attendance rates, the same none percentages, the same empty buildings. Seattle and Portland mirror Boston and Cambridge almost exactly. Colorado is next. Church attendance in Denver and Boulder dropping rapidly. Young professionals flooding in. Cultural secularization accelerating. Even the Bible Belt shows early warning signs. Atlanta, Charlotte, Austin, urban areas in traditionally Christian regions beginning to mirror New England's patterns from 30 years ago. Educational secularization is national now. Public schools and universities across America promote secular values regardless of geography. The cultural elite in media, tech, and academia are overwhelmingly secular, whether they're in Boston or Nashville. Political polarization over sexuality and gender creates the same tensions in every region. The Catholic abuse scandal damaged credibility nationwide, not just in New England. What happened first in New England is spreading everywhere. Here's what makes this particularly urgent. New England had advantages other regions lack. Deep Christian history going back 400 years. Beautiful historic church buildings. Established institutions. Cultural memory of Christianity. If Christianity collapsed there despite these strengths, regions with less Christian foundation are even more vulnerable. The South appears strong now, just like New England appeared strong in 1950. Demographic and cultural trends suggest the South may experience in the next 30 years what New England experienced in the past 30. California already followed New England's path. The Pacific Northwest is following now. Colorado is next. The pattern is clear. The timeline is compressing. So, what can be done? Are there lessons from New England's collapse that might prevent the same fate elsewhere? New England's collapse teaches brutal lessons. First, theological liberalism doesn't preserve Christianity. It accelerates death by eliminating what makes Christianity distinctive. Churches that accommodated culture collapsed faster than those that resisted. Second, cultural Christianity without genuine conversion is fragile. It collapses within 2 generations. Only real faith sustained by personal conviction survives in hostile culture. Third, churches must intentionally pass faith to the next generation or lose it entirely. Assuming young people will stay Christian automatically guarantees failure. Discipleship, biblical literacy, apologetics training, family faith formation. These aren't optional anymore. Fourth, economic realities matter more than churches admit. If young families can't afford to live in your region, your church will age and die. No amount of good preaching fixes demographic collapse. Fifth, both rigid conservatism and spineless accommodation fail. The narrow path requires maintaining biblical truth while genuinely engaging culture with love and intelligence. But here's what offers cautious hope. Emma grew up completely secular in Massachusetts. No church, no religious education. She considered Christianity irrelevant. In college, she met Christians who were intelligent, thoughtful, and kind. They answered her questions without defensiveness. They lived their faith authentically. After 2 years of searching, Emma became a Christian at 23. She now attends a church plant in Cambridge. About 120 people, growing slowly, full of people like her. New Englanders with no church background who came to faith as adults. A tiny minority in a secular region. But proof the gospel can still reach New England when presented with truth and love. Emma said something striking. New England is hard soil, but it's not impossible. The church just has to actually believe the gospel and live it. Hard soil, not impossible. That might be the only hope left. New England churches are empty because generations of Christians failed to recognize the warning signs until it was too late. Theological liberalism, cultural secularization, scandal, economics, political hostility. Each factor alone was damaging. Together, they were catastrophic. The collapse took 150 years in New England. Current trends suggest it could happen in your region in 30. Oregon and Washington already look like New England. Colorado follows close behind. Parts of the Bible Belt show early symptoms. The city on a hill is dark now. Historic churches where Jonathan Edwards preached are yoga studios. Sanctuaries built by Puritans serve cocktails. New England forgot to pass the faith. The rest of America still has time to remember. The question is whether you'll recognize what's already happening in your city before the doors lock for the last time.